Ahora empieza su programa, el show del Dr. Roy Aranda. Temas sobre los efectos que tiene la separación de los niños de sus padres, traumas que afrontan los indocumentados, violencia doméstica, el porqué de la violencia en las escuelas. Llámanos en vivo al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 6, y haz tus preguntas al aire. ¡Comenzamos!
Good evening. Here I am, surprise, surprise. It's Dr. Aranda. Sorpresa, Dr. Aranda enmascarado. Como les prometí la semana pasada, as I promised you last week, so I would actually bring the mask so that you could see it. I just wanted to pretty much show you what I look like in a mask. Quería enseñarles cómo me miro enmascarado. But it's awfully hot, and I'm going to take it off now that you saw me, and you know, you can take photos, photo shoot. There we go, much better. But here it is, I'm pretty sure that among other things, you know, people are looking for ways to make some money, and you know, I don't mean through fraud. I mean, you know, some people are really becoming creative. There's going to be a huge market in all stores for different kinds of face masks. So I think there's going to be a real big market for it. So good evening, all my dear viewers of Tribuna TV. Buenas noches, queridos televidentes. Hoy es el día Mayo 21. Today is May 21. We have another program that I hope is going to be educational for you. Tengo un programa que espero que sea educacional e informativo a ustedes. El tema hoy, the theme for today, is Hispanics and COVID-19, en español, hispanos y COVID-19. I'm sure you all are aware from the news, todos han escuchado en las noticias that Hispanics are disproportionately much more prone to becoming contaminated. Hay mucho más riesgo entre la comunidad hispana para estar contagiados que los otros ciudadanos y americanos. Okay, so es el tema para hoy. We're going to be talking about a number of these factors today. So I do have as a guest an attorney who's been present with me before. Tenemos el famoso abogado David Sperling. In Spanish. En español es David Sperling, right? David Sperling, abogado. Change that B and you got something else. We'll leave that out. And basically, I'll be introducing David momentarily. He's been a guest before. David and I, we go back 30-ish. I mean, I think everybody I know lately, it's like in the 30 years or so. Is it about 30 years? Or more, 30 or 40, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how long it's been, but it's definitely been a while. Basically, he's the guest. I'll be introducing him momentarily. I just wanted to alert everybody, quería dejarles a todos saber que el show está grabado. The show's being recorded right now, live on YouTube, and by tomorrow it will be available on La Tribuna TV's website, Facebook, Vimeo. Estará en otras plataformas grabado mañana, Tribuna TV, Facebook y Vimeo. So, COVID-19, you know, again, I don't see how we can escape having shows that don't in some way address an aspect of COVID-19, given that it's probably become the zeitgeist of all of us. At this point, it dominates our existence. It's wherever you turn, it's COVID-19, COVID-19, COVID-19. So that the purpose of the shows that I've been doing recently and will continue to do will have this component because it's part of our lives now. And I want to provide the viewing audience some tools to try to adjust to a COVID-19 existence and try to do the best that they can, try to see light at the end of the tunnel, and eventually we'll be on the other side of COVID-19. So I'm looking forward to and hoping that we give you useful tools, you know, to help with this with this new lifestyle that we have. Quiero darles algunas pautas para poder seguir adelante a pesar de esta pandemia. So this particular show, COVID-19, has exacerbated the inequalities Hispanics experience, and they are dying at much, much higher rates, as I said before. So before going forward for just a moment, I did want to give all of you, and this is like probably a first time that I'm doing this. I've never done this before. But I did want to alert all the viewers about my concerns for their safety as we enter this major, major holiday in the United States, Memorial Day, El Día Feriado Memorial Day. It's the first major holiday of the year that symbolically represents the beginning of summer, el empiezo del verano, and usually the official opening of the beaches. Now, I'm not sure where all of the viewers are. We have different states. Here in New York, the governor has already opened up beaches, and I understand that, not everybody's going to be running to go to the beach, but the concern and the caution that I have is that since we have so many people who have developed coronavirus burnout and cabin fever from being closed in so much, that I have no doubt that we're going to really see a lot of people wanting to get out. Plus, with these gradual reopening of the country, it stands to reason that people are going to want to go out this holiday weekend. I'm certainly not going to lecture anyone in any way about what to do, what not to do. My caution is to exercise care, to be careful. Abide by whatever regulations exist wherever you are. Preferably use the face mask. You're protecting not only yourself but others. If you are exposed to somebody who has the virus and you become contaminated, you will expose and contaminate 4 other people. Each one of those 4 other people will in turn contaminate 4 more. And you can see geometrically how in a matter of a short period of time you're looking at thousands and thousands of infections. So just to stay safe. You don't want to infect your husband, your wife, your children, your loved ones, your friends. So better safe than sorry. Be careful. And again, that's a caution that I have. Otherwise, I do hope that you'll have a safe Memorial Day. So going forward, and then I have a little surprise also after I introduce David. In essence, David Sperling, he has practiced immigration law for more than 20 years. He has 4 offices in Long Island serving the legal needs of Hispanics and other immigrant communities. David, remarkably, before becoming an attorney, was a foreign correspondent in Central America and later a journalist for the Miami Herald and Newsday, which is why he and I are able to have such intellectual conversations for so many, many years. And he's done these wonderful writings because he actually, he writes well and grammatically correct, not legalese, and it's very easy to read, and he's actually able to get to a conclusion that makes sense. So that must be the journalist background that you bring. Well, here you go. He writes articles for legal publications, mainstream media. He's an expert who gives commentaries in the mainstream media on immigration issues. His clients have been featured in New York Times, USA, Today, Newsday, and all major Latin American television networks. He's been a frequent panelist, lecturer on immigration issues. He also And I'm going to want you to ask to talk a little bit about this. He has he started a legal career with Carecen, and I'm very, very proud to say that he's the owner and founder of the Dream Foundation that actually has raised really nice amounts of money for scholarships to deserving students to go forward after high school to pursue college educations. David, without getting too much more into this, he's received a lot of honors. He's a member of many professional organizations, including the American Immigration Lawyers Association, several bar associations, and the one case that, I've worked with David on many cases, and I've always asked you, out of all the immigration cases that I work with you as your expert psychologist, how many did we lose?
0.
All right.
One case. We were a dynamic duo.
All right. And it's more than one case that we did, right? Okay. It's been a lot of cases. But David also, and I really congratulate him. He came up with this brilliant idea for coming up with a basis to establish asylum. Asylum requires one of, I think it's 4, right? You have to have one of four bases to have asylum. And David came up with a very innovative, creative basis for what would qualify as establishing a credible fear and an asylum. And he did that, and I worked with him on that case for, I believe, 2 years, right? It was about 2 years.
Yes.
So David, why don't you say hello, and if you want to add a little bit to my introduction and say a little bit something about that particular case or what you're doing presently, feel free to do that.
Well, thank you so much, Roy, for those kind words, and thank you very much for inviting me onto the show. And yes, it's been a pleasure working with you over the past 25 or 30 years. One thing is that this is my first Skype interview, and I have to tell you that I was getting a little shaggy until about a week ago, and I said, I better get, all the barber shops and salons are all closed down. So I was finally able to locate a barber that does house calls. And of course he was Hispanic, because I don't think he was an essential worker. I don't think anybody else would have come to my home and cut my hair. So that that really brings to light what we're talking about, the Hispanic immigrant community. These are really essential workers, people that have in low income jobs, but for example, disproportionately in healthcare and food service and manufacturing, cleaning, all these personal services, cashiers that have contact with the public and are at high risk. And these are really our heroes, and I certainly hope that this country will recognize the contributions of our Hispanic immigrant population, and that there'll be a pathway in the future towards citizenship. That's my great hope. But what I wanted to say, Roy, was this virus has really seriously widened the gap between the undocumented and low-income and minorities and the rest of the population. I mean, it was a pretty big gap before, but it's become, this virus has just accentuated it, and there's a huge gap between the working poor and the middle class and professionals, and we can see it with for example, anybody who has a Social Security number and was working got this stimulus payment, $1,200 and more for dependents from the government. Plus, they're eligible for enhanced unemployment benefits. In some cases, these people are making more than they were before. It's sort of a disincentive to work. But on the other hand, you have the undocumented, don't have Social Security number, not eligible for unemployment, in these low-income minority neighborhoods, like on Long Island, for example, in Brentwood and Hempstead and Central Islip, in Huntington Station. Those are really hot spots because there's a large population there. Low-income people, low-income Hispanics, they live together, they're crowded together, and they're very easy to spread, and they're involved in this kind of work that involves a lot of contact with the public. So it's really disastrous, I have to say, for a lot of Hispanic, poor Hispanic or undocumented Hispanics. Many of them have lost their jobs or were in the service professions, and many of them will never get their jobs back, and they're not eligible for any government programs. And it's really the community that has come up and organized food pantries and things like that to help people because they're not eligible for all these other benefits.
Well, the statistics are very telling.
It's really created exacerbated, the difference between the middle class and professions and the working poor.
The statistics are very telling, and we're going to go through some of those things, and we're going to elaborate and talk further about the plight of both the documented and the undocumented Hispanics. So I did want to just start with the introduction and dedication. I forgot to introduce Oscar, who's about 15 feet away from me, the producer. Say hello. He's part of the show. So, me puede poner el primer slide. Vamos a hablar sobre la introducción and dedication. And then I do have like a little video clip that I just wanted to show before we get into the meat and substance of the show. So those of you who have been watching regularly, you know that I like to put an introduction and do a dedication. So here we see that, as David alluded to and I spoke about before, we have a disproportionately much higher level of impact with Hispanics due to COVID-19 because of many risk factors and conditions that worsen infections. We'll get into some of this a little bit. A recent analysis of the nation's 100 largest metropolitan areas revealed that about 68% of low-income Hispanics lived in high-poverty urban neighborhoods. David was identifying several here in Long Island, compared to a third of low-income whites. There are 11 million undocumented Hispanics already prior to the pandemic. They were experiencing a multitude of obstacles. And presently now, because of COVID-19, they are placed at even an increased risk of exposure and contamination. And because they're undocumented, their resources and the kinds of things they could do are severely restricted, along with resources that are available to most of the people in the United States. COVID-19 has exacerbated the inequalities Hispanics experience. They are dying at higher rates. This show is going to focus on some of these issues with the goal of educating and empowering viewers, and I'll provide you, as I do usually, with some resources at the end of the show, so you can contact the resources if you have further questions. This show, as I've done before, I'm dedicating it today for all Hispanics who are suffering from these inequalities exacerbated by COVID-19. And I did want to just start, before we get into the substance of the show, I had a little video clip that I wanted to show. It came up on YouTube, and it's commemorating the 61st birthday of Israel, Hawaiian, wonderful singer. And YouTube put it up in his honor and memory yesterday. It's a little cartoon version. But my reason in wanting to show it to you, and it's short, it's under 2 minutes, is because I think when I listen to it, it just fills me up with joy. And I think that we all can use a little bit more of joy. So it's with that intention that I wanted to show it to you, and I'm giving credit to YouTube for posting this and for putting it up. But it's full of hope. So I wanted to start with that, and then we'll pick up some of the statistics and things that are a little bit more grimmer than this particular video. Okay, so por favor, Oscar. So thank you, Israel. Happy 61st birthday. It's accessible on Google. Thank you, YouTube, for putting this and for doing the commemoration. And I do hope, I get goosebumps. I don't know about you, David, but that's one of my favorite songs. And I look at it and I see the flowers in the sky and everything. And I think that the world is beautiful. So that's the hope that I'm trying to bring to everybody. So let's look at some questions that the show's going to focus on. Por favor, slide 2. I wanted to let all the viewers know as well that if you'd like to take a photo of any of the slides, please do so. You can do screenshots of the slides when they come up tomorrow, whatever you're comfortable with. Take photos or screenshots tomorrow. Some of the questions, and David will come back to this, I just wanted to put it out there for the viewers to see. Is there an immigration crisis? Okay, that's a rhetorical question. The answer is yes. We've been talking about it. It's worse now because of COVID-19. We're going to get further into that. It does affect people who are requesting asylum. It does affect people who are seeking hardship because they are facing possible removal. They are already in the United States. Maybe, David, you can talk a little bit further later on, a little bit about some of the legal issues of where we're going with the asylees and where we're going with removals. What kinds of discrimination and risk do immigrants experience? We're going to really look into that in detail. And lastly, time allowing, David, whatever you as the expert, as the attorney expert, have to say about how psychologists can assist attorneys in immigration proceedings, that'll be on you. Okay. I mean, I know what I do, but if you have something that you want to share from a legal standpoint, that'll be great. Puedes sacar a slide. I wanted to show you now some of the statistics. Slide 3, we're going to go over this very quickly. I just wanted to show you how important, how significant la hispanidad es en este país. How significant the Hispanics are in this country. It's not something trite. ¿Tienes el slide 3?
Oh, permítame, sí. Vale.
Okay. U.S. Census Bureau 2018, Hispanic population reached 58.9 million. I'm guessing that by now it may be close to the 60 million mark. It's estimated that by 2016 we will be 119 million. U.S. is the second largest country in the world with an Hispanic population. Think about it, second largest after Mexico. Places, groups, Hispanic groups that have 1 million or more in the United States: Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Salvadorans, Dominicans, Guatemalan, Colombian. There are many, many, many more, obviously. You know, there are many other Hispanics. I'm just listing the ones that have reached the million mark. And the following states have an Hispanic population of 1 million or more. I won't read through them. I'll leave it up to you, but you can see it's quite a few. It's quite a few of states that have a population of 1 million or more. So, por favor, ahora we're going to start looking at some of the challenges that Hispanics are facing on slide 4. So Hispanics have to deal with stressors related to immigration, as David was talking about before, just stressors pre-pandemic, immigration, discrimination, stricter policies that affect their emotional well-being and health. The 11 million who are undocumented, the political climate is reinforcing marginalization, stereotypes, increased anxiety. They're worrying about separations, family members, ICE stops. Even now, ICE is they didn't stop working. They're still out there. There is an anti-immigrant climate. Many undocumented immigrants live in the shadows. I wrote an article about it. And fear has permeated the lives of immigrants. Puedes sacarlo. David, you have any comments about that particular slide? We're going to get into risk factors, some of the stereotypes, and later on in the second half of the show, we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on the impact of COVID-19 on the Hispanics.
Roy, I just, doing a little research about the plight of Hispanic undocumented and day laborers on Long Island, I came across this clipping that I wanted to share with your audience. The headline, it just says it all. In Long Island community with most coronavirus cases, Brentwood day laborers say, if the virus doesn't kill us, hunger will. This is it right here. And I thought that really sort of summed up the situation for the day laborers, the impoverished Hispanics that it's really, it's the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. And this virus has really, as you said, exacerbated the differences. And it's really a very tough time for the Hispanic community. I can go, I wanted to also, as an immigration attorney, I wanted to also discuss a little bit about what's going on with immigration. Basically, everything is shut down. The immigration courts are shut down. The service centers are shut down. And The interesting thing is that USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, it's the benefit arm of immigration. They're funded exclusively by client fees. And, I read recently that Trump is asking Congress for some emergency funding because they've shut it down and they don't have the fees to support the organization. So, but one thing I wanted to say is that, we are in the process of reopening, step by step, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I did want to emphasize that President Trump, may be using, well, not maybe, is using this coronavirus epidemic to further his immigration restrictionist goals, especially in terms of people entering the country through the borders. But as far as the people, what I wanted to reassure people is that, Trump cannot change the laws, the programs that have been in effect, many of which were started under the Obama administration, such as DACA and these waivers that allow people to get their green cards by doing consular processing. So all of these programs are still in effect, and I really want to urge all of your listeners and viewers that if you are eligible to be a beneficiary of an immigration petition, as for example, the spouse of a U.S. citizen, or the minor child, or the adult son or daughter of a legal permanent resident, or even the brother or sister of a U.S. citizen. I strongly encourage everyone to pursue these petitions. Some of them may take a long time, but people should definitely take advantage of the fact that these programs are in effect. This will pass, and that there actually are some silver linings to this coronavirus epidemic. As I said, the immigration court has been shut down except for detainees. It's supposed to reopen in early June. That's probably going to be postponed because of the judges and the trial attorneys, and to say nothing of the attorneys representing the clients, are scared about their health. And the immigration court is usually, and I remember from my going to immigration court for these master calendar hearings, and there'd be 70 or 80 people in one room, and people hanging out the doorways. It was very unsafe. So there's going to be a lot of change. But the silver lining that I was talking about is that some of these cases are going to be delayed, and in our profession, victory often is not getting a green card. It's sometimes, in many cases, it's just punting down the field and keeping the case alive and keeping people in legal and a quasi-legal status with work permits. So the silver lining is that people who applied for asylum or other or are in deportation proceedings are going to have their cases postponed and delayed, in many cases for years, and they'll be able to have work permits. So that's one of the silver linings to this epidemic.
But I recall, David, from many cases that I worked with you, that cases that were delayed also were advantageous because a particular person who might have been facing a deportation or removal and or looking for asylum. The fact that they're law-abiding, that they're here, that they're working, that they're gainfully employed, that they're doing something, that they have a child, that the child's going to school. Maybe there's medical issues that a spouse or a child faces, but time is going by. They're paying taxes. They're doing whatever they're supposed to be doing. That also fares well for them because it's showing that you're not looking at somebody who's this criminal, because there's a huge, one of the stereotypes is the criminalization of Hispanics. You know, people say, oh, Hispanic, oh, you're un criminal, you're criminal, or this and that. And there's this big thinking of a criminalization that's absolutely false.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I certainly hope that, as I said before, that people will have different ideas about, the undocumented, or basically, propping up the agricultural, like 90% of the laborers in farms across the country are undocumented. People are doing all these basic essential services. Many of them are undocumented, and I certainly hope that the government will realize that, and they'll provide a path to at least having a work permit, guest worker, or legal permanent resident status. But the thing that I wanted also, Roy, to mention to you, and we worked on some of these cases together, was cancellation of removal. And, right now, the border's been basically shut down. But, we represent people that have been in the country. I mean, I think you mentioned there's 11 million undocumented Hispanics in the United States, and many of them have been here for 10, 15, 20 years or longer without having any legal status. Now, there is one of the programs that we work with, it's called cancellation of removal, in which a person, the standards are, a lot of people are prima facie eligible. In fact, a whole lot of people. All it requires to be prima facie eligible for cancellation of removal is to have 10 years physical presence and to have a U.S. citizen child, or married to a citizen spouse, or other relationship with a legal permanent resident, having legal permanent resident children, for example. And a lot of people now are prima facie eligible for cancellation of removal. And those are the cases in which like your services, like the cases in which we worked on together, as if we won every case, because you were able to bring out the extreme and exceptional hardship that these undocumented people would face, or the hardship that the spouses would face if they were to be deported. So there's a lot of cases there's a tremendous pent-up demand, and I really encourage everybody to consult with, come to our office. Just mention, La Tribuna and Dr. Aranda, and I'll give you a free consultation during these difficult times. Yeah, las palabras mágicas, Dr. Aranda, or Tribuna. And we'd be very happy to help people. We have offices throughout Long Island, in Riverhead, and in Huntington Station, and Hempstead, and in Central Islip. And the vast majority of our clients are Hispanics, and my wife is Hispanic. So I'm an honorary Hispanic myself.
She makes really good pupusas too.
I always tell people that I have two kids that are grinacos, medio gringo y medio guanaco. For the English, that's like half American and half Salvadoran. So we enjoy the best of both worlds, and it's a pleasure for me to be working with the Hispanic community. I feel so much at home.
David, we're going to go through a couple of slides quickly just for background, because I do want to. I'm careful about the time, and I want to spend a good amount of time on the the impact of COVID-19 with the Hispanics. We've already talked a bit about it, but I want to at least put the slides up there and just quickly cover some of these things. Risk factors, slide 5. Again, I invite the viewers, please feel free to take photos, or once it's out, take a screenshot. We're looking generally, we've already talked about this, David and I, lower income, socioeconomic status, living in unsafe neighborhoods, inadequate housing, frequent relocations, because you have to move from one place to another. You don't have a lease, the landlord puts you out, for whatever reason you got to go somewhere else. Inadequate or no insurance, limited financial assistance like you're seeing right now, the stimulus bills, many people are being impacted by it, Hispanos that are not really getting their fair share. Medical health care disparities, mental health care disparities, higher death rates because of several medical conditions, and I will get into those a few. Limited access to social supports. Many of the people, especially the undocumented, they're afraid. They're afraid of coming out of the shadow. So, of course, they're not going to sit there seeking the assistance. Inadequate services, travel difficulties, trying to go from one place to another, try to get a license even. We're not just talking airfare right now that everybody's affected, but even simple things like a license. The language barrier, of course, cultural barriers, being looked down upon, the outright discrimination stereotypes, and legal difficulties, which we were already getting into. Slide 6, we're going to look at some of the stereotypes. I'm sure that my viewers are already aware of this. I just wanted quickly to go over it. We're second-class citizens, We're less educated, we're less intelligent, less productive. The stereotypes of having the siesta, half the afternoon, and just, I'll do it mañana, let me put off for tomorrow. Less well-adjusted, more physically violent. Again, I was talking about the criminalization of Hispanos. Criminal tendencies. They, meaning the Hispanics, are taking away the jobs of white people. Yet so many of them who are doing the type of work that nobody else wants to do, and they're being underpaid for it. David, you were talking about the essential work. Who do you think is going to be picking the grapes now for the wineries, at the wineries, and the corn? Who's going to be picking the corn and all of the farming stuff that's out there? Many of these people, many of the immigrants are living in small shacks. They're one on top of another. They're exposed to whatever's out there. They're forced to work despite being sick, because otherwise there's no income. They're the subject of racial jokes, widespread social injustices. What are some of the consequences that they face? Slide 7. Denial of treatment, denial of medication, even like when you're sick, you're turned away, you don't have insurance. Denial for treatment of severe kinds of emotional conditions, including depression, possible suicide ideation. If you're unemployed or you have next to no income, you're facing deportation. You lost family members because of COVID-19. Why would you be surprised to have someone think that, gee, this is just not worth living? So it is a risk, and I want my viewers to be sensitive to this. Having to move to dangerous neighborhoods because it's the only place you can afford rent. Who's going to afford $2,400 now for like a small little apartment or a room? Becoming homeless, you can't pay, you don't have income, you lost your job, you're out in the street. lack of adequate educational, healthcare, and career opportunities, loss of income. We're seeing that a lot now. Loss of benefits, and all of this results in enduring emotional and physical conditions. Por favor, ponme slide 8. And David, I'm going to ask you to comment on all of this and slide 8 when we get to it, because this is getting very much into the substance of Hispanos and COVID-19. Again, we talked about, and you mentioned this, we're over represented in critical occupations: healthcare, food service, manufacturing, cleaning, janitorial services, agriculture, travel, hospitality, private household work. In other words, people that are doing home health aides, for instance. They go and they take care of people who have medical, physical difficulties. Personal services, building services, maintenance, mantenimiento. Again, I'm repeating a little bit here. They have less access to benefits. They either don't have health insurance or minimal health insurance. Lower incomes. They're in situations they have to work even if they feel sick. I already mentioned that. They've been excluded from governmental aid. I did want to give you some statistics. Almost 20% of Hispanics are unemployed. That's 1 in 5, Bureau of Labor Statistics. A recent survey done by CASA, the Central American Solidarity Association, indicated that almost 84% are reporting that they need support with rent. A little bit over 60% need support with utilities. Almost 60% need help, support with food. And David was talking about food lines. Pew Research Center, 40% of Hispanics took a pay cut compared to 27% of the overall population. 29% have lost their jobs compared to 20% of the overall population. Puede sacarlo. David, feel free to comment on any of some of these past few slides. I know that I gave a mouthful, but I wanted to get the information out there for the viewers.
Yeah, Roy, I just wanted to emphasize that, the growing class conflict here. You have, knowledge workers that can work it remotely at home, but really the country absolutely needs like the essential workers, the people that have the personal contact. We need personal contact. We without personal contact, we lose our humanity. And I think that we're realizing to an extent that we never realized before the importance of these essential workers that are really the heroes that are really keeping this country going. And it's just a shame that this coronavirus is just exacerbating these class differences. And I really, truly hope that when this dies down, and that the country will realize the great contributions of the undocumented, the essential workers that have contributed so much. It's so easy. It's very easy for people to disparage Hispanics, as you said. They're lazy, or they're not healthy, or whatever, and disparage the undocumented and poor Hispanics. But they are doing the essential work that this country needs. A lot of these meat processing plants have been shut down because they can't find any workers now. So the workers that were there, it's very dangerous, and a lot of people caught the coronavirus, and they had to shut it down. And now we're going to the supermarkets, and we're seeing, we're not seeing there's a shortage of meat, and there'll be shortages of everything. And so this is really showing this country, and I hope that we can learn something positive, and this country becomes a better country after this crisis fades away, if it ever does.
Well, David, these Many of these workers who are providing these essential services are just as much heroes as the heroes, and I applaud them tremendously. The heroes that are putting themselves at risk, the ones that are doing the medical services and the medical care, they're getting profiled. They're getting profiled frequently. We're seeing them, they're being applauded. But some of these who are living in the shadows, they're not being profiled. They're not being applauded. And I think that we should be applauding them, because these are the people who are providing you with this kind of care and this kind of food and these kinds of services. And they shouldn't be denigrated. They should be elevated to a rank of heroes in their way during this horrible crisis. Me puede poner slide 9. Let's look at some of the effects. These are effects. I'm going to go over some effects specifically with Hispanics, and many of these effects, are for everybody. Physical, medical. Hispanics are 1.7 times more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes than whites. That's from the Centers for Disease Control, CDC 2019. Twice as likely to visit an emergency room because of asthma, 2017. Pre-existing conditions, diabetes, respiratory illnesses, heart disease, they can prove lethal when you contract the coronavirus. Some of the symptoms, we've talked about this before, so I'm only going to go over it very quickly. PTSD. I think we're a nation of PTSD right now, to tell you the truth. I think PTSD is running rampant. A lot of people are fearing death, or they know somebody who died. They're exposed to it, and I think that it's really on the minds of a lot of people. I've given you some of the symptoms there of PTSD, some of the consequences, dabbling in more alcohol, medication, substance abuse, to try to anesthetize yourself and sort of put yourself away from this. Feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, I can't do anything. What's going to happen in the future? Nothing. There's nothing there for me. I'm losing my job. My husband can't work. I'm going to be out in the street. Children, they have physical, somatic difficulties, academic problems in school. Now they're homeschooling. All these kids are homeschooling. Don't assume that you're not going to be seeing some academic difficulties and problems with concentration, focusing, attention. Some of these are going to continue. Emotional difficulties, similar to adults, PTSD, depression, anxiety, behavioral changes. They become maybe more aggressive, more withdrawn, more risky, engaged in risky behaviors. Also substance-related disorders, and they also have the neurocognitive disorders due to abuse and injury. So I did want to at least show you that, and you can take that slide down. So David, I gave a lot of statistics, and I wanted to give you really good 5 minutes of summarizing some of the key points that you say. Some of the things that we're talking about. Again, we're looking at Hispanics who are documented, who are facing PTSD, stereotypes. They're in many ways minimized and criticized. Children too. And we're dealing with undocumenteds who are facing all of that, plus more, because they're getting all of these difficulties just by their legal status. So feel free to expand on something that you think I may have left out.
Okay. Well, one thing is that I wanted to remind all the viewers that please fill out your census form, because this is the way that we can have greater representation. It doesn't matter what your legal status is. Everybody should fill out their census form so that it will increase a representation in the future. Also, I wanted to emphasize that I come from a background in which, when I was 5 or 6 years old, my parents, instilled in me that you're going to go to college, and they started, putting my quarters into a jar for my college education. And what I really wanted to emphasize to your viewers that education is the key to going forward and to rising and assimilating into the culture. And I know a lot of parents, they're dealing with so many problems, in income, jobs, with lack of resources, lack of health insurance. But schools are really so important, and I certainly hope that the schools will reopen in September, because the children are our future. And I really want to emphasize that education is the key to getting ahead and to achieving your dreams. And a lot of parents, don't have the capacity to be the role models, and a lot of young people are on their own. It's very important for people to find someone who can be a role model, older brother or sister, to help them along. We're going through really difficult times, Roy, and but I'll tell you something that no matter how bad it is here, I have yet to hear of anybody who wants to go back to El Salvador or Guatemala or Honduras. So, and however bad it is here, it's a lot worse where people came from, and they're going to stay here. It's going to be really hard. It's going to be a struggle, but everybody's going to stay here. And I certainly hope that everybody that has been here for a long time and has been obeying the law and has been working and contributing, that there'll be a path towards citizenship for them, because they are essential workers and our country depends on them. I truly hope that that after this epidemic dies down, that we'll have a change in our thinking and really appreciate the essential workers, the real heroes, for what they're doing for the rest of us.
Well, David, and you're emphasizing reasons why people wanted to flee and come into the United States in the first place. I'm not so sure that the general public, that the public at large is really aware. I know that many of the Los Hispanos are certainly going to be aware of it. But we're talking about extreme poverty, extreme violence, maras all over the place, sexual abuse, rentas, where people would come and ask you for money, otherwise they're gonna hurt you, rape you, take your child, or kill your spouse. Situations where living at home, police couldn't help the victims. Sometimes the perpetrator was either a cop or friends with the cop or knew a marero. So the cops are helpless to do anything to try to help you. If you report them, you're put in harm's way. And it reached a point, you have to understand that for somebody to want to leave, even parents who felt that the only thing that they could do for their child was have the child leave alone. Why on earth would you do that if you didn't think that otherwise your child's facing imminent death? Some sort of life that's just horrific, to the point that they were willing to do that to save their child and sacrifice themselves. So I just really want people to be aware of the many sacrifices. And we're talking about PTSD here now because of coronavirus. I think, and I said it, and I wasn't trying to be glib at all, because I do believe that right now most of our society is experiencing some form of a PTSD. It may not be this, really active, huge PTSD, but I think we all have some symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder right now. But you're having people that experience PTSD traveling to come here. and then being here prior to the pandemic were experiencing PTSD. Now they're experiencing coronavirus PTSD. We have PTSD on top of PTSD on top of PTSD. And I really hope people are sensitive to that. I think, I really hope that they are aware of that sort of situation. I also wanted to mention, we have only like a couple of minutes left, but I know that on many occasions I'm working with my own Hispanics doing immigration reports and evaluations, and they are so gracious over the phone. I mean, it's such a pleasure to talk to them in deferential doctor and everything, and I'm able to be humorous with them, and they have a sense of humor. I love talking about their food. The other day, somebody from Ecuador actually sent me a photo of a fritada that her daughter prepared for Mother's Day. I mean, these are really gracious, kind people. And the other day, I also went to a Taco Bell, and of course, it was very obvious to me that the person who was giving me the food was Hispano. And, I took the risk and I said, ¿Y dónde están las pupusas? And he said, ay, la próxima semana. So I'm going to order half a dozen pupusas. But, again, these are kind people. They're people with families. They're people, all they want to do is work and get on with their lives. Oscar, tú me vas a jalar ya o algo en cualquier momento. Oscar usually threatens me. Do I have a claim against him, for like giving me the evil eye over the distance? David, you're an attorney. so let's look at slide 10, the resources. So resources, David, I put you at the top as you should be, since you're the guest for today. What I did is I listed the phone number that I got from Central Islip, and I put down your website. So I don't know if there was any other number or something else that you thought that you wanted to put, but I did give your phone number and davidsperlinglaw.com. That's how to get a hold of you, right?
That's correct, yes. Yes, our main number is 631-232-9555. And from there, that's our headquarters, and we can route calls to our different other offices.
Okay, you're in Huntington, you are in Hempstead, and in Riverhead, right?
In Central Islip,
And
yes.
Well, Central Islip is the one I just gave. That's
Okay, so Hempstead... Yeah, sometimes I get confused myself.
I think the 232-9555 is Central Islip. I think that's the Central Islip number that I put up there, right?
Yeah, Central Islip is the main office, yes.
Okay, so that's where people can get a hold of you.
Yes,
my association, the one that I feel is a family to me, New York State Psychological Association, I've given you the address, the phone number, and their website. Again, these are psychologists. You can go to the website, look at the resources that are available for people that are not members, and they want to see what can be offered. And of course, it's something that means a lot to me. The American Psychological Association underneath is the parent organization of all of the state associations, including NISPA. So if you're in New Jersey, you have NJPA. If you're in California, CPA, California Psychological Association, Texas, and so forth. So I give you their phone number and their website. If you go to their website, they have a tremendous wealth. They have a tremendous wealth of resources that you can find out. It's not just COVID-19, but they have wealth of resources: domestic violence, coping with tornadoes, with hurricanes, with floods, dealing with all sorts of psychological, societal kinds of issues. I encourage you to do that. Feel free to contact David. David and I, we go back quite a ways. We try to work well as a team. David has indicated that he's used psychologists before successfully to help support the case, right? To help support the basis why it would be horrible to deport a family member. Why it would be so horrible for whoever's left behind to be without that member. And in an asylum case, how it could be so horrible sending this person back and not granting the relief, and then the person goes back to a country that cannot protect him or her and is at risk of being killed. So that said, me voy a despedir. I hope that you all fare well. Be safe, please. Anden con cuidado. Memorial Day. Be careful. Try to have a lot of fun on Memorial Day weekend. Just be safe doing it. There's a lot of things you can do at home and through the internet and all sorts of virtual kinds of activities. Stay safe. I will see you in June. We're going to have some additional shows. David, si quiere despedirte de todos.
Dr. Aranda, thank you so much for inviting me on the show. And remember the magic words, Dr. Aranda y Tribuna. You get a free consultation at our offices. It's been a real pleasure. It's been a pleasure working with you and working with the Hispanic community. It's such a pleasure, as you said, to be part of the community and to because the people are like salt of the earth, and it's just such a great pleasure to be working with the Hispanic community. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and tengan cuidado a todos ustedes, y vamos a sobrevivir, vamos a superar, no tengan hay esperanza para el futuro siempre. Adelante.
We'll come to the other side one day. We'll do it all together. Vamos a estar al otro lado un día. Oscar, sé que tú ya quieres tirarme la pupusa en vez de dármela. So, ¿quieres despedirte, don Oscar?
Todo bien.
Okay, Oscar me va a dar ahora unas pupusas revueltas. Okay. So, buenas noches a todos. Good night, everybody. Be safe, okay?